morning, and thank you all for being with us for our Build Your Business Wednesday event. Today, we have the privilege of listening to Mrs. Tasha Booth, who will be discussing social media marketing. So a little bit about Mrs. Booth. She is an agency owner, coach, and podcaster. She is the founder and CEO of the Launch Guild, which is a full-service launch support agency working with established coaches and course creators with course and podcast launches. Her team is over 20 members strong and works together to support their clients in being able to focus back onto their zones of genius. Additionally, she mentors virtual support pros, launch managers, and agency owners who are passionate and ready to grow their businesses while living life on their own terms. And she is the host of How She Did That podcast, a podcast for virtual support pros to learn business and tech tips. Tasha has been featured in Forbes, Fast Company, and Entrepreneur, and she has appeared as a guest speaker for various summits and podcasts, including Amy Porterfield's Online Marketing Made Easy and Julie Solomon's The Influencer Podcast. So real quick, before we start, please take a note of a few things. At the top of the chat, there will be a few links for the Innovation Center, which include our social media handle, website, and email address. And there will also be a link to a post-event survey that we would like for you to fill out at the conclusion of the presentation today. Lastly, please remember to mute your mics. And if you have any questions at any point during the presentation, please put them in the chat and we'll address them at the end. So without further ado, please welcome Mrs. Tasha Booth.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and be with you today. One of my favorite things to do is to talk about social media because it has been the catalyst that has really skyrocketed my business in a lot of ways. I have built my business from zero in 2016, late 2016, all the way up to this year. Our revenue goal and our projected revenue is $1 million for the Launch Guild. So it's been a crazy journey, but I'm going to share some of the things that I use in terms of social media strategy and that I've used even from the beginning. Some of these things are still tried and true even from the beginning. So what I want you to know very much from the beginning is that you don't have to do everything in social media for it to work for your business. You just have to do some key things and kind of find the strategy and the direction that works best for you. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat as I'm going. I will be checking in with the chat intermittently, and then at the end, I'll make sure I answer all of your questions and we will get started. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen. In the chat, give me a yes once you can see my screen, just so I know that we're all on the same page. That would be super helpful as we go. Good to go. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Okay, so today we're going to talk about how to boost your business exposure using social media. And our focus today is going to be threefold. First of all, we're going to talk about simple strategies to increase your views and engagement on social media. We're going to talk about how to find your ideal clients on social media. And we're also going to talk about tools for streamlining social media scheduling. So we couldn't talk about social media without me asking you to do a screenshot of this page and then share it on Instagram. I hang out on Instagram all day, every day. I have 2 Instagram accounts at the Tasha Booth, at the Launch Guild. You can share it on stories, on Instagram stories, if you know how to use stories, and tag me on there. And I love talking on Instagram, so we can hang out together there. Okay, are we ready to rock and roll? Here we go. So I'm going to give you 5 strategies or 5 tips today. The first one is all about using your profile strategically. Okay, so what I mean by that is I'm going to show you the examples of all of my social media profiles. This one is for the Tasha Booth side. And you'll see that right here at actually the place that is for my name, I've actually put a horizontal line and then also what I do. And so I've made it very, very clear from the beginning if people are in the right place or the wrong place, right? If people are looking for a dog walker, I'm not their person. But if they're looking for a virtual assistant or an OBM coach and an agency coach, I'm their person, right? I've also linked to my other accounts. So if you have multiple accounts, you can also do that. And then down here, you'll see that I've listed exactly what I do, who I serve, how I can help people. And Smart Bio is basically, it's a way for people to go and take the next steps in terms of then going to my website or going and joining my Facebook group or going to my podcast. It just gives people options in that link. Here's another example of the Launch Guild one. So you'll see one of the differences in the Launch Guild one versus my own personal one is if you're building a personal brand, you're probably going to want to use something like your own picture because people want to connect with and share a common experience with actual people, right? So if you are using the same picture throughout social media or a similar picture throughout social media, that way, if you pop up on a Facebook group and somebody's seen you on Instagram, they'll kind of put two and two together and start connecting the dots. With the Launch Guild side, what we've chosen to do kind of recently is to change this to the Launch Guild's logo because of the fact that we're coming as a united front. It's no longer just about me, it's also about me and my team as well. And so that's why it's became important for us. But you'll see that it connects the same kind of thing. We talk about what we do, who we serve, we connect to my other account, and then we ask them to take the next step by clicking on the bio in that let's chat. So that's kind of the call to action. You'll be hearing me say that word a lot. That's the call to action in that. Then if we come over to Facebook, Facebook doesn't do as great of a job on, this is my Facebook business page. So it doesn't do as great of a job of giving you kind of real estate in the very top or ideal place for people to learn about what you do. So what we do, and by we, I mean my team and I, what we end up doing is creating a graphic that puts right there who I work with and what I do on the graphic, so that when people show up on the page, once again, they know that they're in the right place, that they know that I'm the right person to help them. And then this is a super, super important place to also put your bio and info. Okay, so this is actually my personal Facebook profile, right? So when you go to Facebook, you want to make sure, if you're on Facebook, you want to make sure that you have a couple links to the next steps for people to hear about and learn about your business. One of the things that I absolutely hate is if there's somebody that I've met in a Facebook group or something like that, and I'm like, oh, that person seems really cool. Let me find out about more of what they do. And they have their Facebook completely locked down to the point of where I can't see anything about their job or their business or anything. You don't have to keep all of your Facebook open, but having those links to go to your website or to go to your Instagram are going to be really important. So make sure you at least have that open to be public instead of private so that people can actually see what it is you do. Moving on. So last point in this is that your profile is your calling card. So I really want you to think about really sharing who you are, what you do, and who you support from the very beginning in all of those places. And you want to be super clear but concise in it. You don't have a lot of real estate in order to put everything. So just be clear and make sure that people know the really important pieces of what you do, and so that they can know right away whether they want to take the next step in following you and that sort of thing. So my next point is to meet your audience where they're at. So your content is about humanizing you and establishing you as the expert, right? It doesn't have to be all business because we as people aren't just all business all the time, right? We have family and we have friends and we have hobbies, and that's what makes us amazing people. And once again, people want to work with people, right? They want to work with people that they like and that they know and that they trust. And humanizing yourself starts that know, like, and trust factor just as much as you leading as the expert. So I'm going to show you a couple ways, or 5 different ways actually, 5 different pieces of content and ways that you can use content on social media in different ways and different strategies for that. So this first type of content is engagement and connection. What I mean by that is this Instagram post was actually a story about, basically the sum of the story was there was this man who kept wanting to be on my podcast. And so he submitted 7 podcast inquiries to be on my podcast. Well, the problem is, number one, he's a guy. My podcast is called How She Did That. I only have female guests, right? And number 2, he just wasn't an ideal person for the podcast. And so finally, I told my assistant Danny to write him back and everything. So it was a funny story basically of how Danny wrote a much nicer and much more eloquent message that I wanted her to send to him and everything. So this is just about engagement and connection. And as you'll see, I had 273 people who liked it, and there were a bunch of comments on oh my gosh, I've been in that situation too, where I've had to do the corporate clapback kind of thing. And it just created communication and community in terms of a shared experience kind of. This next one is on and around education. So this was actually a post that I did in a Facebook group. We had a client that we worked with on her launch, and on her launch, she ended up making $1.5 million from her launch. So what I did, it was in one of the Facebook groups that I belong to, the business-centered Facebook groups, I led with the fact that I was a launch strategist and I owned a launch agency. And then I kind of told the high-level story of the things that worked really, really well in her launch. So I established myself as the expert and I educated, I gave a little bit of education around, like, even if you don't work with me right now, here are some things that you can do to improve your launch outcomes. So that was really, really helpful. I got tons of engagement on that once again, in terms of people thanking me for the tips. And I ended up booking 5 new discovery calls that day just from this post, because people saw that I established my expertise, but it wasn't in a, I'm the expert, you should just hire me, here's my link way. It was in a way that gave back and educated people. The next one is a promo post. So this is one that I think is really important and people forget about a lot of times. The fact that we are in business to make money. And so it's okay to promote yourself on social media. Remembering that you have to remind people what services you offer, what courses you offer, what your business is, what products you offer, whatever the case may be, right? And so not having every single post be promotion, but having some of them be really heavy promo and just saying, hey, this is what I'm offering. This was for my launch management course. And it was like, you can apply now. Applications are open, doors are open. Here's the link, go do that. And then we have inspiration. So this is just reminding people that they can do it, that if you've done it, they can do it, that sort of thing. Lots of quote kind of things, or stories. It could be a story about when you failed and then succeeded or something like that. It just makes people feel all warm and fuzzy inside, which we all need a little bit more of. And then entertainment. So this entertainment post was actually a reel. I love doing reels. If you don't like video, you're probably not going to like reels, but it's okay. But this was just me dancing in my dining room / living room and talking about the fact that, like, we're not going to undercharge. We're not going to underprice ourselves. We're going to remember who we are and everything. It's entertainment. But what I like about this was that it was also educational and inspirational, right? So it kind of served 3 purposes in terms of one post. Okay, and then the last thing for this is to use hashtags that are relevant to your audience. So what I mean by that is, if you're thinking in terms of, and this is especially relevant for places like LinkedIn and Instagram, if you're thinking about how is my ideal audience going to find my content, what are they kind of looking for in terms of hashtags? We like to think in terms of that and then use those hashtags. So Instagram allows up to 30. We don't always max out the 30. Sometimes we use 10, sometimes we use 20, sometimes we use all 30. But you'll see that this is kind of a mix. We use virtual assistant, business support, building boss ladies, women in business. Those are kind of the ones. And then we kind of mix and match it up. So really think in terms of not necessarily the hashtags that you're always searching for your own personal needs, but really the hashtags that your ideal client or ideal community would be searching. We're going to talk about how to do that in the inverse in a little bit as well. Moving on to number 3, the ABCs of CTAs. So CTAs are short for calls to action, and they answer the question, what is the next step you want people to take, right? What do you want them to do next after they've consumed your content, after they've read your content, or reacted to your content? We don't want the conversation to just stop there. We want them to do something, to take action, because social media is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of them getting into our communities. And then we want them to either buy our program or DM us or something. So here are 5 strong calls to action that you can use. The first one is comment below and tell me, right? So this one was basically my path to being the CEO that I am now. So I started off as a professional actress in musical theater. I was a Zumba instructor teaching over 20 classes a week. I was a director of 2 YMCAs. I was a virtual assistant, and now I, lead an agency. And that was one of the things that I love about this is it's a super simple graphic. Like, you can create this in Canva in less than a minute, right? But the caption on that was like, tell me what your first adult job was. And then there were so many comments, so many people being like, oh my gosh, it's very similar to basically their own stories in terms of they didn't start out in the online space. They started out doing other things. And it was great to see that so many people had different paths to success. So the call to action in that is comment below and tell me XYZ thing. What do you want them to do? What do you want them to tell you? This one was actually from yesterday and it's still doing super duper well. The call to action was drop an emoji in the comments, right? So this was drop the money emoji in the comments if you agree. And basically it was talking about like not or being too salesy, and the fact that like you should be salesy, you should be selling your product, you should be selling your service because you are a business and your goal is to make money. So basically it was just like, hey, if you agree, put an emoji in. That creates more engagement. And on social media, the algorithm, which you'll hear people talk about all the time, basically that is just the algorithm is the online space wanting us to engage with people and wanting to see that like people like and want to share and react to our content. And the more that people do that, the more that Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn is going to show your content to more people, because it means that it's fun and relevant and interesting and important to people. Third call to action CTA is use the question sticker. So this is if you use Instagram stories, which I absolutely love Instagram stories. Instagram stories basically is a place on Instagram where everything disappears in 24 hours. So it's a great way to give really like quick information to people. You can do video on there, you can do pictures on there. And what I love to use is the story sticker that is a question sticker. So this one went to the same one that I showed you before about what was your first job. And this was just another place and another way for people to share that, right? So they could put that in, and then I get that in my DMs, and then I could respond to people and be like, oh my gosh, I love that your first job was as a nurse or as a dog walker or whatever the case may be. And then we have two more. So this is DM me and share, and then whatever you want them to share with you. So this one was DM me and let's chat. And I think this one was about one of my programs. So this was just like a quick like, hey, if you have additional questions about my programs or about something that you're not sure on, send me a DM, let's chat about it, something like that. DMs, direct messages, are great ways to continue the conversation with people and to get people really engaging with you. I really love using direct message to actually close a lot of sales. My last launch that just ended, I think about 2 weeks ago, I have a certification program, and of the 25 people that enrolled, I didn't have to have any sales calls with any of them for a $5,000 program, right? That used to be unheard of, where you had to get on a Zoom call with every single people and have a 30-minute call with them. Now people are so busy, really being able to go into the DMs and send them a voicemail message and just be like, hey, I saw you looking at the program. I'd love to answer any questions, and being able to chat back and forth that way is a great opportunity to not have to get on a Zoom call and to still be able to support them in the way that they need and want to be supported. And then last but not least, we have head to my bio to grab the link. So letting them know where they can go and take the next step, right? Once again, we really want to make sure that we're not just ending the conversation at like a really great, feel-good, inspirational post. What is the next thing that you want them to do? So this one was, we were celebrating 10,000 members in my Facebook community, and we wanted other people to join the Facebook community. So we're telling them, head to the link in my bio, which has the link to my Facebook group, right? And join the Facebook group. Learn more things, next steps. And moving on to number 4, we have 2 more to go. So posting is only half of the equation. So sometimes we think in terms of social media, and we think in terms of the social side, where is the posting side, or we think in terms of the media side, rather, excuse me, which is the posting side. And we forget about the social side, right? And the social side is the place where the magic happens in terms of it, right? We really need to put the emphasis on social, because we don't want it to be a one-way conversation. We don't want people just to be like, oh my gosh, this is so great, or like, I feel this way too, or, thank you so much for this new information or education, and then the conversation ends there. So here's where you can use those same kinds of hashtags and similar strategies that you use for posting for having conversations with people, right? So when we're thinking in terms of, let me actually back up for a second. The first way we can do this is in Facebook groups. So I have been, I don't even know how many Facebook groups I'm in at this moment, but the ones that I'm active in, I'm probably active in about 5 to 10 Facebook groups, super active in at any given time. One of the things that's on my schedule every single morning is to engage in some Facebook groups. And then at the end of the day, it's the same thing, to engage in some Facebook groups. And what I'm looking for in ideal Facebook groups are that those groups have tons of people that are my ideal audience and potential ideal clients in them, right? I am trying to get a connection, get in front of new faces, let people know who I am, what I do, and who I serve, once again, and have conversation. So it's not always just about selling, but it's a lot about nurturing community and conversation, nurturing new partnerships and experiences. I like to find new people in Facebook groups and then extend an opportunity to do an online coffee chat with them. And so those are just some opportunities to get in front of new people and get them to kind of know who you are. This strategy has worked absolutely so well for me, to the point of where probably every single day I'm tagged at least 3 to 5 times in various groups in terms of like, oh, you're looking for, a launch team to do your next launch, Tasha and her team can do it. Oh, you're looking for a virtual assistant, you're looking to learn how to be a virtual assistant. They tag me for those things that I'm known for because I've done the work and have been consistent in showing up in those groups and letting them know that I'm the expert in the room in terms of launch and agency and launch support. The other thing that I want you to think about is finding your audience on social media via hashtags as well. Okay, so what that means is on Instagram and on LinkedIn, not so much on Facebook. Facebook, my suggestion would definitely be that you go to some Facebook groups and really engage in those places, right? But this is more for Instagram and somewhat for LinkedIn. I'm not on LinkedIn as much, which is why I'm not giving you any LinkedIn examples, but this is for Instagram. So you would put into the search a hashtag. So let's say I searched hashtag virtual assistants, and then it would show me a whole bunch of posts of people that use that hashtag. So if I'm looking to connect with virtual assistants, maybe they are looking to up level and want to join my, my community or my program or something, I'm going to go and search them out as well and start conversations. So I'm going to comment on some of their posts and like some of their stuff and maybe follow them, especially if they're already following me, or follow them back and everything. So that's the way, like, yes, it's great for your community to come to you, but it's also great for you to go to your community and seek them out and see what they're interested in and what their needs are and everything. So maybe pick like 2 or 3 hashtags a week to go out and search and post and like and comment on people's posts that are in your relevant hashtag bank. The last thing is make sure that you're responding to post comments and to DMs, right? We, once again, don't want this to be a one-way conversation. So continuing the conversation will build know, like, and trust. Know, like, and trust means that people feel like they know you, they like you as a person, and they trust you with their business or to take them to the next step in terms of whatever you're selling, right? So the know, like, and trust factor, especially in the online space where like everyone's strangers, it's really, really important to do. And one of the ways that you can do that is to continue the conversation. Remember that you can comment back and ask them maybe another question if they've commented on your post, or if they've DM'd you and they've either asked you a question or just commented or liked one of your stories or something like that, you can send them like a quick voice message and be like, oh my gosh, blah, 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 blah. But continue the conversation in that way. Okay, last but not least, we have number 5, and this is all about systematizing your content. So what I mean by that is you want to make sure that social media doesn't become overwhelming for you. So having a system for how you produce your content is going to be really important. Whatever you can do, whether it's you can commit right now to posting 1 time a week on Instagram and make Instagram your platform, that's absolutely fantastic. Make sure that you have a system in terms of blocking off time once a week, right? So blocking off time to create that post once a week, blocking off time to actually schedule that post, and then blocking off time to actually engage with your community on Instagram and everything. So if you have one post a week, maybe you can also do 10 minutes a week or 10 minutes a day of Instagram engagement. It doesn't have to be a ton of time. My favorite schedulers in terms of things are, first of all, Facebook Creator Studio. Facebook and Instagram have definitely upped their game in terms of how easy they make it to schedule posts, to create some posts and some content natively in their scheduler. So I would suggest really learning that first and just using Facebook Creator Studio at first. And then Smarter Queue is another one that we use with some of our clients. The great thing about Smarter Queue is that you can basically use and repurpose the same content. So you can put a ton of like what's called evergreen posts. So those are posts that you can reuse over and over and over again. You can put a bunch of them into Smarter Queue and be like, basically like, show this post every 90 days, right? Or show this post once a week, every Tuesday, if it's like the same post for a Facebook group or something like that. And then Planoly is what I love and use specifically for Instagram. It's a visual scheduler. So I love the fact that like you can see how everything's going to lay out in your Instagram feed via Planoly. So those are the three that I definitely and highly suggest. Okay, moving on to final thoughts. If you have any questions, don't forget to post them in the chat. I have like 5, 6 more slides, and then I'm going to head to questions. So final thoughts. Number one, I want you to master one platform at a time. Remember, I said just a little bit ago that we don't want to overwhelm ourselves with social media. And what I see sometimes is that people go gangbusters on, a whole bunch of different platforms all at once, and then they burn out on it. So learning one platform at a time and figuring out where it is you actually like to hang out. So if you really love to hang out on Instagram for your own purposes, then you'll probably love it also for business because you'll already be there, right? Same thing with like, if you love hanging out on TikTok or something, maybe that's your place of choice to kind of get started. And then once you have done that for a while, and by a while, I mean a quarter to 2 quarters, so 3 to 6 months, once you've done that for a while and feel really confident and comfortable on that, then you can add another platform. But don't do everything all at once because you won't have the space or capacity to really become a master of it and really take the time that it needs in order to create a really great strategy for it. Number 2, create a content strategy and schedule that works for you. So what I mean by that is if you don't have time to post 5 days a week, you don't have to post 5 days a week. You definitely don't have to post multiple times a day. Really think in terms of what can I commit to? And I think the consistency in it is way more important than saying, okay, I'm going to post 7 times a week and then kind of being mad at yourself every single week when you don't have time to post 7 times a week. So if that's 1 time a week to start, and then in a quarter, in 3 months, you want to start with 3 times a week. And then 3 months later, maybe 5 times a week, or maybe you get some support in terms of a virtual assistant or social media manager to kind of help you once you're posting, multiple times. But I think it's less about the posting and more, once again, about the consistency. And then even more importantly, about the consistency in terms of engagement as well. Number 3, final thought is set aside time for engagement daily. I cannot stress this enough. When I am not setting aside time to respond to posts, to respond to DMs, to go and look at other people's content and react to their content, I see that my posts get fewer likes and fewer engagement. And that's because the algorithm is like, oh, you're not showing up for other people. We're not going to show your stuff to other people. So it's really, really important that you create that engagement and that you engage daily if at all possible. And it doesn't have to be a ton of time. Like I said, I set aside about 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the afternoon for consistency. But even if you just have 10, 15 minutes a day, that's totally fine. And number 4, learn one new strategy at a time. So there is something new coming out. Like I feel like it's every other week, and sometimes it overwhelms me. And I do have, a social media manager that helps me and creates the content at this point. But I do my engagement myself and a lot of the stories myself and everything. And so don't try to do Instagram stories and reels and carousels and posts all at the same time. you will once again overwhelm yourself and burn out. So really think in terms of, how do you enjoy showing up? What do you want to do? What do you want to do more of? What do you enjoy doing? And once you think about those things, then once you get that strategy down, then you can add an additional strategy and learn something else. But until you've done that, stick to one strategy at a time. It's totally okay. Effective social media strategy takes time. So this is one of the things that I hear a lot from the newer virtual assistants that I coach. One of the things that I do at the end of my program is that they get this whole 90-day accelerator workbook where they're supposed to do some action steps each day, a lot of them around social media. Excuse me one second, I'm going to take a sip. A lot around social media. And so they'll come to me like 2 weeks later and be like, it's not working. I don't have 1 million followers. And I'm like, you expected to have all of these followers, and all of this engagement and everything when like you're the new kid on the block. You just showed up 2 weeks ago. I really think about it being a snowball, right? Anytime we're starting something new, I think in terms of a snowball. So snowballs start really, really small most of the time. And then think in terms of rolling that snowball down a huge ski hill. So if you start rolling it down the hill, it's going to build up speed and pick up momentum and everything as it's going. And eventually it becomes this giant boulder of a snowball, but it doesn't start there, right? And it takes a while, and it takes the consistency in doing the right things in order for it to continue to roll. So really think of that as in terms of social media strategies and engagement too. And I know that there are so many people who have bought into my higher level programs that I had no idea they were even following me or liking my content or any of those things, because they never shared it, they never liked it, they never responded. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, I've been following you for like 2 years now. And I was just like ready to buy one day. And I'm like, great, that's awesome. But that shows that the consistency of what I've been doing for 2, 3, or 4 years now is now paying off, right? So that's super important to remember. And then lastly, do what feels fun. It's supposed to be fun. If it doesn't feel fun, you're not going to want to do it, and you're not going to be consistent. And so all of this doesn't make any sense anyway. So that's why I love video, right? And I love showing up on video. That's why I do things like reels and funny dances and everything. And I love telling stories and sharing about the things that I'm doing outside of just my business, the things that I'm doing in my life. If that's you, then show up authentically and be you. Don't feel like you have to be put into this box, because the people that are your ideal clients are the people that are going to want to see and appreciate you as you. And they will cherish that, and you will get such a great niched community in terms of when you show up as yourself versus feeling like you have to show up as this perfectly curated version of yourself. Okay, so last but not least, you can find me at the Launch Guild, and thelaunchguild.com is for my agency side. And then for all things coaching and courses at the Tasha Booth and tashabooth.com. I am ready to take some questions. Here we go. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and look at these questions over here. Okay, let me scroll.
All right, I have a list.
Okay. Oh, awesome. You're so prepared. Thank you.
All right. So the first one is, how often would you say to promote your product versus post content like motivational posts, reels, stories, etc.?
Yeah. So I would say I usually, depending on when, what I'm promoting and everything, I probably do some kind of promo at least once a week. You can do twice a week, even 3 times a week, and really think of in terms of how you can also weave it in to what you're already talking about. Like, how can you weave that into something that is funny or motivational, right? It doesn't have to always be either or, but I would say no more than probably 2 or 3 times a week.
All right. Next question is, would you say limit releasing all of your products at first and start little by little?
It depends on what feels good to you. So what I mean by that is sometimes people wait, and it becomes like this weighty thing in terms of I have to get it perfect and I have to have everything perfect before I go. I'm a true believer in done is better than perfect. So if you have one product that you feel like is ready to go and is solid, totally release that one, and then have the next ones ready to go as soon as possible. But at the same time, I don't want you to wait until everything is perfect until you actually start.
All right. Next question is, what about using YouTube as a social media strategy?
Yeah, you can absolutely use YouTube as a strategy. So I think of YouTube more as a search engine rather than social media. The difference is YouTube and Google and Pinterest are very similar in terms of they use keywords in order for you to be able to find what you need. Whereas things like Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn, those are social media. They use more hashtags and everything to find what you need. Facebook is kind of both because it also uses keywords in terms of it. The thing with YouTube is that it has a larger learning curve and people kind of expect higher production value on YouTube. And so if you're just starting out, it may not be the thing that you want to spend a lot of time on because you're also going to need to, have video editing or video recording equipment that has, a good video quality. You're going to need to know how to edit that or pay to somebody to edit it. And all of those things. So that's why I don't suggest YouTube for beginners, but once you have a really solid strategy of some kind in terms of content, then maybe add YouTube onto that.
All right. Next question is, how do we get the dots before the hashtags?
Yeah, so in Planoly, you can do actual spaces and it will keep the spaces for you if you actually create your content in Planoly. If you're doing it in actual Instagram, I literally just do like the return key and then a dot, return dot to like give enough space and then the hashtags at the bottom.
And then, in your opinion, is it better to use a desktop to post content or a phone?
It depends on the type of content. So I usually use for Instagram stories, I use my phone for Instagram stories. And for Reels, the same thing and everything. I'm not even sure. I would have to check with my social media manager to even like, especially for Reels. I know that you can schedule stories now on like things like Planoly, but most of the time we schedule all of our content. And so we use Planoly and schedule it in there on our desktop or on the desktop, and then schedule it in there and go from there. But you can use either or. I don't think it doesn't matter in terms of reach or engagement or any of those things.
Okay, let's see. Oh, what is one tip that you have about Instagram Live?
Yeah, so my suggestion for Instagram Lives would be to make sure that it serves a purpose and keep them short and sweet. Because then after you've done the Instagram Live, you can also repurpose it for like an IGTV, Instagram television, right? Or you can use little snippets of it for like things like Instagram stories or something like that. So yeah, that would be my suggestion for Instagram Lives. Just make sure that it has a purpose. And also Instagram Live is really great because once again, it's a place where you can engage with your community, but just make sure that you're repurposing your Instagram Live somehow, like either on their stories or using it as IGTV so that it has a longer shelf life, basically.
Okay, what about Twitter as a platform, like especially for educational promotion?
Yeah, so I didn't really mention Twitter because it's not one that I use all that much. I go to Twitter every once in a while when there's like a scandal erupting on Twitter and like it's a place to like get all the juicy gossip, but I don't use it for my business at all. So what I mean by that is you can definitely use it for things like education. It's great for if you're in the tech space, Twitter is absolutely fantastic for that. It can be great for business. It's just not one that I've used personally in a really long time for my business. But I think the thing that I don't like about Twitter is how fast it moves and how quickly tweets just outdate themselves because everything moves at such a crazy pace on Twitter. So I like places where my content has a little bit longer of a shelf life, and on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn, that is the case. But Twitter works absolutely super well too. I think that the bottom line is that whatever you want to use, your audience is probably there. Like there are 7 billion people on the planet, your audience is somewhere, right? And so whatever medium you want to use in terms of social media to get in front of your audience is totally fine. You just need to pick one and stick with a strategy for that.
All right, let's see. How do you feel about using TikTok to enhance your current audience and attract new ones?
Yes, so TikTok can be absolutely fantastic. it's one of those things that like you have to love video, of course, right? And so if you are a person who doesn't love video as much, if you're an introvert and video isn't a fun strategy for you, it's probably not going to be the best place for you. But it's really about finding the best thing for how you want to connect with your community. And so if you love doing video, then TikTok is an absolutely great place to do video. Just like YouTube, if you love doing video, YouTube's a great place to, could be a great place for you. Once again, TikTok, you're probably going to need to edit it and have a really clear strategy for producing the videos, which is why, unless you're really committed to it, it could be hard to kind of start there.
All right. Next question is, how do you figure out which platform is best for your business or brand?
Yeah, so there's really no which platform is best. And what I mean by that is I truly believe that like you can show up however you want to for your audience. The consistency piece is going to be the best. So I would say really decide like to try one platform for a good quarter and see, number one, do you enjoy doing it? And number two, do you feel like your audience is connecting with you there? If the answers to both of those things is no, then you can move to a different platform and try something else for another quarter. But a lot of times I always tell my clients to kind of start where they're already hanging out. So if you're already hanging out on social media, just for fun, and you're already on, let's say, Facebook, for example, you already know Facebook to an extent. You'll have to learn Facebook for business, which will be a little bit of a learning curve, but at the same time, like you already have the basics down and you know kind of the layout and where things are in terms of the dashboard. And so starting where you already know and feel comfortable can be absolutely great, and just building on there. But if you aren't a person who uses social media at all, then it's just a matter of kind of picking and saying, okay, what do I already enjoy doing? Where do I already enjoy hanging out? And then going from there.
All right, next question is, what metrics are best to track on Instagram to gauge your progress and how successful you're being on that platform?
Oh, great question. Absolutely. Okay, so I would definitely look at your engagement metric as the top one. Like, so are you increasing your reach, and are you increasing your engagement with people? Those are the two. I really think that follower count is a vanity metric, and I have seen accounts that have hundreds of thousands of people, but they gained those 10 years ago, right, when they were doing a completely different business type. And so now they have a bunch of people, but not a lot of engagement because of the fact that like not a lot of people care about what they're doing right now in their business. And so they get, 50 posts likes per day or per post when they have hundreds of thousands of people. Whereas I've seen smaller accounts that have 1,000 people, but are getting 100 or 200 likes each one of their posts and getting really great engagement in terms of people commenting and reacting and sharing and saving. And those are the things that you want. Those are the things that are more important. So definitely engagement and reach are the two that you want to look at. And then if your follower count is like going majorly down or whatever, and it's not increasing incrementally when you're being consistent, then there may be a problem with like the kind of content that you're sharing that may mean that it's not connecting or resonating with your ideal client. But other than that, I would definitely say engagement and reach.
All right, two more questions. Do you have any advice for selling books of any genre?
Yeah, I actually don't. So we don't do any product services in for our agency. So I don't have any recommendations for selling books other than when you want to start selling, definitely make sure that you are doing some community building and audience building on the front end of that. So normally when you are selling a book of any kind, you're definitely like know that book is coming, a year or so out. And so definitely want to make sure that you're creating your audience and building your audience on the front end of that.
All right. And how do you create a social media strategy? What does it entail?
What does it entail? So I think the big part of a social media strategy is knowing the kinds of content you want to create for your ideal audience. and then basically deciding what platform you want to use for that content, and then having a strategy of posting and then a strategy of engaging. So all the things that we talked about are basically make up a good social media strategy. You have a posting strategy in terms of the types of content that you're creating for your ideal client, and then you have an engagement strategy in terms of how you're connecting with your ideal audience and ideal client.
All right. Is it necessary to have an account for each platform before finding where our audience is?
My suggestion would just be that once you know like your business name and you know that it's going to be your business name and like you know that it's not trademarked by anybody else or any of those things, you just grab that name on, like you grab the what's called the handle for each one of those platforms. That way you don't have to worry about somebody else, like you deciding, you know, a year from now that you want to use Instagram and somebody else, another business has already taken that Instagram handle on Instagram, right? So if you just like, not buy it because you don't need to buy it, but if you just get it everywhere, then you don't have to worry about it. Even if you're not using it, you don't have to worry about it down the line.
I was waiting for another question to come in.
No worries, you're good.
But so far we don't have any other questions. Let me see. All right, I think that's it.
Okay.
All right, well, I do want to thank you, Tasha, for taking the time to present this important information. In a couple of seconds, I will be putting her contact information in the chat. Once again, it is at the top of the chat, but I'll go ahead and repost it again at the bottom so that everybody has access to it. Also, the links to contact the Innovation Center will also be at the end of the chat as well. And this presentation will be available on our YouTube channel on Friday for everyone to view. Oh, do we have? Yep, we have another question. I knew it.
Okay.
All right, so real quick, what needs to be done by the business owner and what needs to be done by assistants? I'm assuming in terms of social media management.
Yeah, absolutely. So my suggestion for what needs to be done by the business owner, I think that the business owner is probably going to be the one, number one, doing most of the engagement, and then of course, like video things. So I like to always ask myself the question in terms of what is the thing that only I can do, right? So in terms of how do I need to show up in a way that like my social media manager can't show up because she's not Tasha Booth. Anything else your assistant or your social media manager can absolutely do. So if you already kind of know the types of content or the pillars of content that you want to create, you can give them that roadmap and say, okay, on Tuesdays, we're going to do a promo post. On Thursdays, we're going to do an inspiration post. On Saturdays, we're going to do a connection post or whatever, and kind of give them some boundaries and borders in terms of that. And then they have free reign to create the content. And then, of course, you approve it before they schedule it and everything. But for the most part, my social media manager, she creates all of our posts and writes the captions. So she does the graphics and the captions, and she does the hashtag research at this point. And then she has my marketing assistant and then myself, we look at it, we approve it and everything. She goes and schedules it. But in terms of like things like Instagram stories or engagement or DM conversations and everything, I'm still the one doing that.
What tools can we use for hashtag research?
Mm-hmm. So I think it's called Hashtagify, and I may be pronouncing that wrong, but if you just put it in Google, I'm sure it'll pop up. That's one that we use. The other one is Planoly has a kind of a hashtag researcher of its own that you can use. I really just like going and seeing like, okay, who's following me, and like going down the rabbit hole of, oh, they're following me and they're using this hashtag, or oh, they post similar to content to me and they're using this hashtag. Like, let me go try this hashtag out. I like doing the hashtag research that way. I think it can be a little bit easier to kind of see like what real people are using like right now in terms of hashtag strategies.
And do you have to follow everyone that follows you?
Absolutely not. Yeah, that's a definite no. You do not have to follow everyone that follows you. I actually wouldn't even recommend it, because I like vetting the people that I'm following and knowing that like their content is quality. Their content are things that like I don't disagree with, you know. So if they're creating types of content that like I just don't want people to think that I approve of or agree with, then I'm not going to follow them.
There was one more question that I actually
No worries.
I should have written it down. Um, all right, we got another one. All right, so Rachel says, I'm a solopreneur and I hear that posting at a minimum of 3 times a day is ideal and it's pretty overwhelming. What do you suggest?
Yeah, I don't know. I know a lot of really successful business owners, and none of us post 3 times a day, myself included. So I think that that is a strategy that is really overwhelming to people. And I hate when big, like social media gurus say to do that, because it doesn't make sense for most people. Because the reality is, if you're posting 3 times a day, you also have to engage on those posts 3 times a day. And that doesn't give you room to do anything else in your business. Like there are so many other things that you have to do in your business. Don't overwhelm yourself. Create a strategy and create a posting schedule that works for you. And I know tons of people that post 1 to 3 times a week, and they have great communities. Remember, it's not about the number of followers that you have, it's the quality of those followers, and it's the engagement that those followers are creating, that, and then creating buyers out of that. So I think that posting 3 times a day is just posting because you want to get more followers, and that's not a strategy that you need.
Okay, if you need a social media manager, where can you find one?
So if you need a social media manager, you can find one often in Facebook groups. We have a referral form that you can fill out, and I'm gonna post it in the chat right now. And then these are people who have coached with me. So I do the business side of Virtual Support Pros. So I can't, say that they're amazing social media managers. So definitely vet them yourselves. But that is our referral form that you can fill out, and we will send you over the names of 3 people that have worked with us and everything. But the other place is a lot of Facebook groups. So my Facebook group is called How She Did That. Business owners that are not Virtual Support Pros can also join that group and post what's called a job op, basically looking for a social media manager or whatever. So definitely, I would say look at those places, as well as other places that have like virtual assistants, online business managers, social media managers in the groups.
All right, and I'm going to repost your link one more time at the very end so that everyone can find it. All right, and we have one more question. Does your time ever become too expensive to comment, reply, research, hashtags, etc.?
So I think I love connecting with my audience, and I think that it's important to me. Like I've made it important to me to connect in a way that feels authentic, and so that for me doesn't feel overwhelming. I think that like there are times when I'm super duper busy or I'm having a really busy week, and Lauren, my social media manager, will go in and she'll kind of like supplement and make sure that like everything's being commented on and everything and replied to. But I mean, I think that if you want those higher paying clients, it's going to be really important to them that they know that like they matter to you. And so showing people that they matter is important to me, which is why it's important to me to like and comment and be in the DMs. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't need somebody. Like Lauren also goes into the DMs on weeks that I'm, super busy, and she'll just make sure that like I've replied to things, or she'll reply to whatever she needs to and everything too. So it doesn't necessarily mean that like you won't one day need some assistance even in like DMs and stuff like that. That's totally okay. But at least making the attempt or effort, I think, is really important to connect with your audience.
Okay, and oh, two more questions, and we have 3 minutes left. So does your assistant have your password? Does your assistant have your password? And what do you recommend on that?
Yeah, so my assistant does have my password to everything. We use what's called LastPass for passwords. One of the things is that because you need to actually sign in to Instagram like on your phone, LastPass won't work for that. So if you have an assistant just for things like Instagram or something like that, you may want to change it to something that is not your password for other things. So, like Tasha123. That's not my password, clearly. But you may want to change it to something that's just like more mundane. That way, if they are no longer your assistant or something happens or whatever, you can change it and it's not a huge deal. But we use LastPass for all of our password protection. And LastPass is a way that you can send passwords securely without everybody on your team or your assistant or whatever actually seeing the password. It just auto-populates in places where the password is needed.
All right. Are you locally based?
I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So no, I'm far away from you guys.
All right. And last question. I'm telling the truth this time. Would you consider Clubhouse a social media platform? And do you think it's worth connecting with potential clients or customers on?
Yeah, so Clubhouse is absolutely great. I guess it's social media. Yeah, I would consider it like in the social media bucket. I just feel like it's slightly different. It has this line of like podcasts or social media kind of thing, right? But I love Clubhouse. I have a pretty nice following on Clubhouse, and sadly, I don't use Clubhouse all that much for the same reason that I don't use LinkedIn. Like I just started feeling like I was spreading myself too thin, and the fact that Clubhouse, it's harder to kind of repurpose that content in a real way. They've kind of made it easier with now they allow recording and everything, but I still think it's kind of harder to repurpose that content, which is why I don't use Clubhouse as much for my strategy, but I still think it's a really great place. And I have one of my friends online, she is rocking it with Clubhouse and makes like thousands upon thousands each month just on the Clubhouse chats that she does. So it's a great place if you want to use it.
All right, cool. Question gate is closed. So once again, we would like to thank you, Tasha, for taking the time to present this important information to us. If you would like to contact our guest speaker, I have placed her contact information in the chat. Also, the links to the contact the Innovation Center are in the chat as well, at the beginning and at the end of the chat. This presentation will be available on our YouTube channel on Friday for everyone to view. And I want to thank you all for attending, and everyone have a good day. I'll leave the room open for about another 30 seconds so that if anybody needs to get any of the information in the chat, you can have a few seconds to do so.